Struggles with logistics have been a challenge for every industry. Might they soon be coming to an end? Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio today, and we are going to talk about those logistics challenges first. Joining us right away is Mike Steenhoek from the Soy Transportation Coalition. Mike, export sales this past week, we saw a pretty good number for soybeans. 2.2 million soybeans were shipped out last week. Is that telling us that the Gulf export facilities are all back online?
Well, we've been really happy to see that rebound, and obviously Hurricane Ida was a big gut punch to the Gulf of Mexico, and that there has been a considerable time of recovery for that, particularly getting power to these facilities. There still remains particularly one facility that had incurred some significant damage that still needs to recover from that. But again, the bottom line is we're happy to see those facilities, that supply chain operating closer to full throttle. It's really an opportune time given the fact that we've got our harvest online and our export season is really in full season now.
It certainly is. Those combines are running, beans are coming out of the field. Mike, as you look to the West Coast, there's been a lot of struggles with port backlogs at Long Beach and LA. Have there been any changes to that? Are we seeing some improvement?
It's still very congested, and I wish this is something that could be resolved in a matter of minutes or hours, but this is something that's going to be with us for the considerable future, well into 2020, throughout 2021 and into 2022. This particular congestion at the West Coast, that really has an impact on containerized shipping. And so those exporters for soybeans and other agricultural products who utilize these 20 or 40 foot long steel boxes, these containers, are really being adversely affected by this. So this is something that clearly is an area of concern for our industry.
Now, I know President Joe Biden has worked to get those ports moving to a 24-hour schedule. Is that going to make much of a difference?
Well, we're hopeful it'll provide some degree of relief. I think it's important to really ground ourselves in the reality that we've got an overly subscribed supply chain that is experiencing stress at each link, whether it's the ports, whether it's the ocean vessels, whether it's the railroads, trucking, barges. It's each link is really experiencing that. And so to alleviate or mitigate pressure at one link in the supply chain, that's nice, but it's simply you've got the other links that are overly subscribed as well. So that's the real concern.
Well, you mentioned the railroads. Of course, railing our products from the Midwest to the ports is a huge business. Have we been seeing elevators able to secure the cars they need?
Yeah, I mean, overall it's gone well, but again, you've got a lot of challenges confronting both rail and some of these other industries, and one of them in the United States is a shortage of workers. And these transportation companies, they're now competing more and more with other industries like construction, retail, distribution. All of these other industries are experiencing a shortage of workers. And so now these transportation providers are having to compete with that. And for a lot of folks, they don't want to have a job where they're gone from home considerable periods of time. And so you could argue that our supply chain dilemma is largely a labor shortage issue. Obviously, there's many things that are contributing to it, but I think labor is clearly one of the biggest causes of this challenge.
And Mike, if labor is the challenge, it's probably going to cost more money to get those workers to come into this field. Is that going to bake higher freight costs into more permanence for agriculture?
Yeah, that's something that money gets passed on to somebody, whether it's the customer or a decreased price offered to farmers in the case of agriculture. It needs to be recovered somewhere. And so that's clearly something that we should expect when you see that inflationary pressure on wages. Expect to see a higher price at the shelves. We're seeing that right now, and I unfortunately will probably continue to see that for the foreseeable future.
Mike, you mentioned truckers being in short supply. So many folks in agriculture have their CDL or own their trucks. Is there room here for farmers to make additional money hauling freight?
That's something that a lot of farmers have done and continue to do and continue to explore. Obviously, taking the step from just hauling your own grain to actually doing it for hire, all of a sudden there's additional compliance costs associated with that, additional hoops you have to jump through, purchasing more insurance than it's if it's just for your own operation. So a lot of farmers, they're considering that and asking the question, well, is it worth jumping through all these hoops if you can get that additional revenue? And some farmers have said yes, they're willing to do that. Others have said they don't have the appetite for it. But that's clearly an opportunity for a number of farmers, something they obviously have to do a lot of due diligence to make sure it's the right fit for them.
They certainly do. Well, Mike Steenhoek from the Soy Transportation Coalition, we certainly appreciate you keeping an eye on these issues, and thanks for giving us an update this week.
Thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure.